Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. My name's Mitch Carraway, 42 years old, Pest Exterminator by trade. Not glamorous, I know, but someone has to crawl under buildings with a flashlight and a sprayer to chase out the things that make people scream. Mice, roaches, hornets the size of your thumb, I've seen them all. You might think a guy like me would be the first to vanish in a real emergency. Turns out, when the world starts to fall apart, it's the ones used to dirty jobs and tight spaces who hold out the longest. I clocked in just before dawn that day. The sky was still that deep gray blue, the kind that makes you think it might rain but never does. My first job was a call from an apartment complex on the edge of the city. Some tenants had been hearing scratching in the walls, something about a foul smell coming from the air vents. Probably raccoons, I muttered to myself as I pulled up in front of the building. I was wrong. It wasn't raccoons. As I opened the back of the van to get my gear, I noticed the silence. Cities are never truly quiet, not at this hour. But this morning, the usual blend of engines, car horns, and early risers was missing. Just wind, just the sound of leaves rustling. That should have been my first warning. The property manager, a wiry guy named Devin, met me out front. He looked like he hadn't slept, kept wringing his hands and glancing up at the building like it might collapse at any second. "You said scratching in the walls?" I asked, snapping my gloves on. "Yeah, and a smell, a bad one. Worse than usual." "How long's it been going on?" 3 days, but last night was different. Tenants in 3B and 4A both said they heard someone inside the vents. That made me pause. Inside? Like a person, crawling around. I gave him a look. "You sure this isn't some prank?" He shook his head fast. "I know it sounds nuts, just check it out, all right?" I made my way inside with a headlamp, tool belt, and a few aerosol cans. The lobby was empty, eerily clean, and the air had a metallic bite to it. I caught a faint whiff of something rotten when I reached the stairwell, something like spoiled meat mixed with mildew. 3rd floor, Unit B. I knocked. No answer. "Exterminator," I called out. Still nothing. I let myself in. Standard 1-bedroom. Linoleum floors. Worn-out carpet in the hall. The smell hit harder in here. I pulled my mask up over my face and moved deeper into the unit, following the sound of faint scratching. It led me to the vent above the hallway closet. I grabbed a step stool and removed the grate. Inside, the duct was pitch black. Then something blinked at me. I swear, 2 eyes, pale, milky, staring back from deep in the shadows. I almost dropped the flashlight. "Hey, who's in there?" I barked. No reply. Just a slow scraping sound as the thing backed away into the ductwork. I bolted out of the apartment and nearly ran straight into Devin. "You see it? What was that?" I gasped. He looked around nervously. "Some of the other tenants. They're saying it's not an animal, that it's people, sick people, acting off." That's when I heard the scream. A woman from 2 floors up. Devin took off before I could say a word. I followed the sound to the 4th floor, heart hammering. As I rounded the corner, I saw a woman in pajamas bolting down the hallway, her face pale, eyes wide. Behind her, a man staggered from one of the units, shirtless, skin grayish, covered in something that looked like dried rust. I raised a hand. "Sir, are you all right?" He looked at me, but his eyes didn't register anything. His mouth opened wide, revealing a raw, red tongue. Then he charged. I ducked just in time. He slammed into the wall behind me with a thud, then turned and tried to grab my arm. I saw the dark fingernails, the slack jaw, the blood around his mouth. That's when it clicked. I've seen infestations. I've seen rats chew through each other, but I've never seen a person look like this. I yanked a spray can from my belt and blasted him in the face. It wasn't pepper spray, but it was a pesticide strong enough to knock out hornets. He staggered, howled, and I ran. By the time I hit the street, people were starting to pour out of the building. Some screaming, some injured, some wrong. Twitching, limping, glassy-eyed. I backed into my van, heart pounding, and locked the doors. Then I checked my phone. 15 missed alerts, texts, push notifications, news headlines. Words like outbreak, quarantine, unknown illness do not approach. The world was already changing and I'd walked right into the center of it. I drove. No plan. No idea where I was going. Just away. City streets were starting to clog up. Sirens everywhere. People running in all directions. I saw someone try to carjack a delivery truck only to be tackled by another person who sank their teeth into the guy's neck. I swerved away before I could see the rest. I needed somewhere defensible. Somewhere no one would think to look, and I had just the place. There was an abandoned office complex on the outskirts. It used to be a pest control headquarters before the business folded. I'd done some freelance work there a year back and remembered they had reinforced storage units and steel doors. I reached the parking lot around 8:15 a.m., no one else in sight. As I crept inside, I made sure to grab everything from my van: toolkits, spare sprays, metal clamps, even a modified air rifle I used for bird control. Not exactly made for this kind of situation, but better than nothing. Inside, the office reeked of stale air and old insulation. Most of the windows were boarded up already. Vandals, probably. I cleared out a corner room with no direct exterior exposure, blocked the door with a filing cabinet, and started setting traps in the hallway. Pressure pads, tripwires, even a few makeshift snares using copper wire. It's strange what instinct kicks in when you feel the walls closing around you. Around 9 a.m., the power cut out. My first thought, no more security cameras. My second, no more electric locks. I stood in silence, listening. Then I heard it, the soft shuffle of footsteps. Too slow to be a regular walker, too heavy to be a rat. Something was inside. I peeked through a broken panel in the wall and saw a figure crawling down the corridor. Not walking, crawling, elbows scraping against the tile. Head lolling side to side like it was searching for something. Its skin looked waxy, like melted plastic stretched over bone. I reached for the air rifle and held my breath. It turned the corner and triggered a tripwire I'd set. A bucket of industrial cleaner fell straight onto its head with a wet thud. The thing flailed, letting out a garbled, wheezing sound, and then went still. I waited. 10 seconds. 30. No movement. I crept closer and saw its face. The eyes were gone. Just empty sockets. Yet it had found its way inside like it could sense me. How? I didn't have time to figure it out. I dragged the body to the loading dock and locked the metal gate. As I turned to head back, I heard a soft tink, like something scraping metal. I froze. The vents. The same sound from the apartment complex. Someone, something, was in the walls. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the corner of that cold, dark office with a nail gun in one hand and a flashlight in the other, listening, breathing slow. That scratching in the vents never stopped. Sometimes it was soft, like a rat dragging its tail. Other times it was faster, urgent, something shifting metal aside to make room. I knew those duct systems like the back of my hand. If something was crawling around in there, It could move room to room without ever touching the floor. At 9:40 a.m., I heard the sound of steel creaking over my head. I aimed the light at the ceiling. Dust was falling from the vent panel. Then, a small hand reached out. Human-looking. Thin. Dirt-streaked. I backed away slowly, not making a sound. My makeshift traps were mostly on the floor, useless if this thing came from above. The panel dropped with a loud clang. A figure tumbled out and hit the tile hard, groaning. I raised the nail gun, ready to fire. "Wait!" the figure gasped. "Please!" A kid, maybe 16. Pale, shaking, eyes wide with panic. He wore janitor's uniform. The patch on his chest smudged and unreadable. "You're not one of them?" I asked cautiously. He shook his head, coughing. "No, I hid in the air ducts. They couldn't reach me." I stared at him, trying to judge whether he was just scared or something else entirely. He didn't look sick, no bites, no black veins, just terrified. "Name?" I asked. "Julian." I lowered the nail gun slightly. "How long have you been in the vents?" "Since yesterday. I worked at the old lab down the road, cleaning crew. Place went into lockdown, no one told us anything. People started acting weird, fast, violent. So I ran, hid up there. They didn't follow, not at first. Lab?" He nodded. "Biotech testing. They never told us what they were doing, but weird stuff was going on. Loud machines, workers getting sick, then one day, nothing, no exit, no help. Just chaos." My stomach dropped. Biotech, experiments, it lined up with what I was starting to suspect. This wasn't natural. "Did you see any of the sick ones up close?" I asked. Julian swallowed. "They don't see like we do. It's like they smell or hear better. One guy I knew, he just stared at me through a wall. Didn't move until I coughed, then he lunged like he knew exactly where I was. So that explained it. Not sight, sound." I adjusted my belt and handed Julian a spare respirator mask. "You're staying quiet from now on. That means no noise, no panic. Just follow me." He nodded fast. I turned back toward the hall, but something was different. It was too quiet. No wind, no distant alarms, no scratching in the vents. Just stillness. Then we heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping. Slow, deliberate. Someone, or something, was walking across the ceiling tiles above us. I motioned to Julian to duck down. We crouched behind a rusted desk, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The steps stopped right above us. Then a voice whispered through the vents. Hoarse. Hollow. "Found you." Julian clapped his hand over his mouth. A second later, a ceiling tile shattered and a shape dropped through it. Twisted limbs, hunched posture, eyes reflecting the flashlight like mirrors. It didn't fall. It landed, crouched low, already lunging toward us. I fired the nail gun. 1 shot, 2 missed. Julian kicked over a metal trash bin to slow it down. The creature tripped, screeching, and I rammed it with the desk. We sprinted for the stairwell, bolting the door behind us. Downstairs, 1 level at a time. Each hallway had more signs of struggle. Broken glass, trails of something brown-black smeared across the floor, torn bags, scattered tools. Julian pulled me aside near the loading dock and pointed at a stack of crates marked Biotest Dispose. "This is the stuff," he whispered. This was being delivered to the lab from another location. Then it stopped. 2 days later, this. I looked at the crates. They weren't refrigerated, no seals, no safety labels. Just black plastic containers, some already leaking a dark, sticky residue. Whatever was in them wasn't meant to last. And yet, it did. That's when the sound of engines cut through the silence. Not cars. Helicopters. We peeked out a side window and sure enough, 3 black military choppers swept over the rooftops towards the city center. Behind them, smoke curled into the sky. Dark, rising columns. Julian exhaled. Rescue. I shook my head. No, that's containment. As if to prove my point, we heard a distant boom, then another. Controlled blasts. They were cutting off sections of the city, isolating neighborhoods, burning bridges, literally. We had to move. I took Julian through the back corridors to my van, which I had hidden behind a set of dumpsters. The vehicle was still intact, thankfully. We loaded supplies into the back, including bottled water, energy bars, a portable radio, and a backup map I kept for rural routes. The plan: head to the edge of town, find elevation, radio for help. We hit the road by 10:20 a.m. By that point, the city was in chaos. Sirens wailed on every street. People ran through intersections without looking. Others staggered slowly, jerky and lifeless, eyes fixed ahead. Julian kept his head down in the passenger seat. It's like they're multiplying. They are, I muttered. Fast. I saw a police barricade up ahead and turned onto a side street. We didn't want to risk confrontation. Not with how many of the officers looked just as pale as the infected. We passed a school, doors open, swings still rocking, and I felt a chill. The outbreak hadn't spared anyone. Julian turned to me, voice tight. You think it started at the lab or somewhere else? I think the lab helped it spread. His silence said everything. We stopped at a gas station for fuel. I parked behind the building, out of sight, and went inside cautiously. No lights, no clerk. But there was movement behind the counter. A low shuffling. I raised the nail gun and crept forward. Behind the counter, a man in a clerk's vest sat slumped against the wall, muttering something under his breath. I couldn't make out the words. Just a phrase, repeated. 13. Gates, 13. Gates. His eyes were sunken, his fingernails torn, but he wasn't attacking. He looked haunted, then he froze. Slowly turned toward me. You can't stop it, he whispered. It's already inside. I backed away. What is? But he didn't answer, just stared past me, right through me. Julian called out from outside. Mitch, hurry! I turned, and when I looked back, the man was gone. Just a dark smear where he'd been sitting. Back in the van, Julian was shaking. There's no way out, he said quietly. They're closing in. The roads are being shut down. What if the whole city— Don't go there, I snapped. We're alive, that's what matters. I didn't tell him I'd seen the barricades behind us being reinforced by people wearing hazmat suits, or that the helicopters weren't dropping help. Just smoke canisters. It was almost 11 a.m. We had 1 hour left. 1 hour before the real wave hit, because I'd seen something that made my blood run cold. As we passed a construction site on the outskirts, I noticed a group of infected clustered around a deep trench. But they weren't trying to climb out. They were digging, burrowing, trying to get deeper underground. Why? I didn't know. But I had a terrible feeling we hadn't seen the worst yet. We left the city limits at 11:03 a.m. The sky had turned a shade darker, like something was pressing down from above. The highway was mostly clear, though twisted wrecks here and there told us we weren't the first to try escaping. Julian hadn't said a word since we passed the digging infected. I knew he was shaken, so was I. But I had to keep moving, had to keep my mind working, connecting dots no one else wanted to see. These things weren't just sick. They weren't wandering randomly. They were organized in their own twisted way. I'd seen nests in the walls, patterns in their movement. They weren't aimless. They had a goal. and it was underground. We stopped at an overlook on a wooded ridge about 15 minutes outside the city. I killed the engine and got out to scan the valley with binoculars. The city skyline was now obscured by rising smoke. Fires had spread. One of the bridges was gone, collapsed, or taken out deliberately. Julian joined me beside the van, arms wrapped around himself. "What now?" I didn't answer, not yet, I just kept watching. That's when I saw the trucks. Not civilian vehicles, military transports, 4 of them, pulling into what looked like an old utility station at the edge of the hills. Men in suits, others in uniforms, moving with purpose. They were carrying large metal containers, black, sealed, and humming. Julian saw it too. "That's not rescue." "No," I agreed, "that's control." We listened. A distant sound like metal grinding, followed by a faint hum beneath our feet, like a generator powering up. "What if they're not trying to stop it?" Julian asked. "What if they're trying to contain it, or worse, use it?" My throat went dry. Because the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The biotech lab, the sealed crates, the disappearances. This wasn't a random outbreak. It was a test. I turned back toward the van. "We need proof." Julian blinked. "You want to go there into that site?" "If we're going to survive past today, we need to understand what we're facing. We need something real, something we can show the world." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right, let's move." We took the back roads, unpaved utility paths and deer trails, the kind I used to spray for hornet nests in the summer. It took us 20 minutes to reach the outer fence of the utility station. The whole area was surrounded by heavy wire mesh and steel gates, most of it recently reinforced. Surveillance cameras dotted the corners, but half were turned the wrong way, as if someone had wanted to look the other direction. We found a gap in the fence, hidden behind a stack of rotting pallets. Inside, the place was quiet. Too quiet. There were no birds, no wind. Just a low-frequency thrum, like a hive, breathing. We snuck past rows of old electrical panels and into the service building. Julian pointed to a stairwell descending into the earth. Fresh boot prints covered the steps. They went down. We followed them in silence. The lower level was colder, damp. The walls were lined with metal piping and blinking consoles, many marked with radiation or biohazard warnings. Whatever had once been here, it wasn't just electricity. Julian found a control room with active monitors. One screen showed a thermal scan of the facility. Another displayed internal readings, air composition, pressure shifts, temperature spikes. Then we found it. A feed labeled Sublevel 3 Core Chamber. We stared at the grainy footage. It showed a massive room. Concrete walls, steel platforms. At the center, a large cylindrical tank pulsing with blue light. Cables ran from it into the walls, the ceiling, the floor. And around it, hunched figures moved slowly in a circle. The infected. They weren't attacking. They were worshipping. Or waiting. I stepped closer, horrified. There was something inside the tank, a shape, pale, elongated, barely visible through the fogged glass. It opened its eyes, and the camera feed went black. Julian backed away. "We have to leave, now." But I'd seen something else. On a nearby table, someone had left a printed report. I scanned the top. Specimen Response Timeline Phase 2, Urban Deployment. Below it was a checklist. Test Site A, complete. Test Site B, failure. Test Site C, active. Test Site C was our city. They were studying the spread. This wasn't an accident. I took the page and stuffed it in my jacket. Let's go. We made it back to the van without being spotted, at least I hoped. The sky had darkened further, not from clouds. From ash, falling slowly like gray snow. A new column of smoke was rising from the city's east side. Julian climbed into the passenger seat and looked back at the hills. They're not going to warn anyone, are they? No. They're just going to erase it. I didn't answer, because the truth was written all over the evidence I held. They didn't want survival. They wanted silence. We drove for another half hour, eventually reaching a ranger station deep in the woods. It had a shortwave radio setup, old but functional. I powered it up and found an emergency frequency, still broadcasting. Julian gave me a look. You think they'll listen? They have to. I read the report over the channel, line by line. Left out names, left out locations. Just facts. Then I burned the hard copy, because holding it was too dangerous. We camped nearby, under an overpass, hidden beneath a tarp. Kept watches and shifts, no fire, no sound. That night, I had a dream. I was back in the city, walking through empty streets. Every building had eyes, every window whispered. And underground, something moved, a heartbeat. Louder, closer. When I woke up, the forest was still. But the air smelled wrong. Like ozone and dust. Julian stirred beside me. What time is it? I checked my watch. 12:04 p.m. We'd made it. 12 hours since the first outbreak wave. The world hadn't ended, but it had changed, and we were still breathing. It's been 2 weeks since I escaped the city. Julian and I are safe, for now. We move between rural towns, avoiding patrols and checkpoints. The news says nothing, just controlled stories. Gas leaks, riot events, evacuations due to weather. But I know what I saw. I was a pest exterminator. My job was to deal with infestations. What we're dealing with now. It's beyond infestation. It's a design. The infected keep showing up farther and farther from ground zero. New symptoms, new behaviors. Some can mimic voices. Others are almost aware, like they're evolving. The ones underground haven't stopped digging. Every time I sleep, I dream of that tank, that shape, watching. And I hear the voice from the vents. Found you. They're not hunting us randomly. They're looking for something. Maybe it's us. Maybe it's what we know. But I'll keep moving, keep fighting. Keep warning whoever's left to listen. Because the first 12 hours were just the beginning. And the real outbreak hasn't even started yet. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.